Hello, good evening. Welcome everyone in this initiative called as Saturdays for Sustainability Learning. And today we will be discussing one of the very important topic, which is carbon credit. Before that, I'll just quickly explain what we are doing here. This is I can say, mastermind group or sustainability discussion forum where we try to discuss different concepts and to understand it in a holistic manner. So that is what we do here. All right, so I'll just quickly make you a co-host, Geetanjali, because many people are joining, and yeah, so you're a co-host. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so why we connect every Saturday? So you can understand, you can consider this initiative as a mastermind group, and these are the four outcomes that you can expect from this initiative, which is learning new concept every day, networking with fellow professionals, getting to know about different opportunities in terms of learning and career. And the last is thought leadership. Yeah. So the idea behind this initiative is there are two things. First is you might know about data, information, knowledge, wisdom. This is a pyramid. We have more data, more information than we can possibly consume, and especially in sustainability field, there is always more to consume than what we have the limited time. But knowledge and wisdom, the application part is very precious, and that is something that we miss. So with each other's experience, we can get that. And second thing is discussion and question and answer, which is most important, or I would say the best way to learn. And that is what I would like to invite all in this session. It's not like an one expert delivering the session, so it's just co-learning, and it's a safe space to collaborate and learn, co-create, I would say. So please feel free if you want to jump in anytime you want to share your experience. And I hope you have registered with this Google form. One time registration is required. No need to register again. This will ensure that you will get the invite on calendar as well, apart from WhatsApp group. So, all right, we will directly start for today's topic. And today we had topic, as we discussed, it was carbon credit. And Gitanjali has graciously agreed to facilitate this topic. So I would hand over this session to Gitanjali now. Yes, I'm stopping my screen share. Yes, Gitanjali, over to you. Thank you so much for this.
Okay,
Uh,
so thank you
yeah.
so much for giving me this opportunity. So a little bit introduction about myself. I am Geetanjali Paliwal and I work in carbon credits for past 1.5 year to 2 years now. And yeah, I think I am a bit equipped with the things which need to be discussed. And yeah, okay, so basically, let's just dive into the concepts of carbon markets. So, basically, what is a carbon credit? When we talk about a carbon credit, so carbon credit is like a license or permit that represents the reduction of 1 ton of carbon dioxide, which is or other equivalent gases, and it is a way to measure how much pollution has been avoided or removed from the atmosphere. So, how does it work? So, imagine a company runs a factory, and this factory creates pollution when it produces goods. So, to balance out this pollution, the company can either reduce its own emissions, like using cleaner technologies, or invest in projects that reduce the pollution elsewhere, like planting trees or building renewable energy sources. So, for every ton of carbon that is avoided or removed, the company earns one carbon credit. Now, these credits can be sold or traded to other companies who need them to meet their own pollution reduction goals. So, in simple terms, carbon credit is a way to track their own efforts to reduce pollution and to meet our global targets, which we have set uh, as like the Paris Agreement and every like in the COP 29 as well. So, now let's talk about the types of carbon markets. So there are two types of carbon markets basically. The one is compliance carbon market, so which are created by government or international agreements to help the countries or companies to meet their legally binding emission reduction targets. So they are usually very much into the law part of the law part of the country, and they are very much strict, and it is all compliance based. So that is a mandatory participation there. It is regulated by government, and some international agreements like Kyoto Protocol or Paris Agreement, which we will dig into later. And there is a usually a emissions cap there. So there is a limit on total emissions which is allowed within a certain period. So this is basically a compliance carbon market where you cannot volunteer. It is compulsory for every company to participate there. And now second comes the voluntary carbon market. So India majorly falls into voluntary carbon markets now. So it allows companies, individuals, or organizations to voluntarily offset their carbons by purchasing carbon credits, even if they are not required to do so. So voluntary participation can be by businesses. So they choose to buy carbon credits. There is no legal requirement. They can offset the carbon, their offset their emissions by buying the carbon credits. And voluntary markets have a different standards or different registries where they can register the projects, and the buyer can take it up from there. And yeah, this is how it all works. I think if Dhananjay wants to add something to it, it would be great.
No, no, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So moving on, next comes the history. So basically, where did this all started from? So the first thing was Kyoto Protocol. So as we all know, in 1997, the Kyoto Protocol to UNFCCC introduced three market-based mechanisms. So after that, when the after that, when the Paris Agreement came, everything changed. Like the carbon mechanism, the carbon market, the scenario, the dynamics, everything changed. So what was happening in Kyoto Protocol? There were three mechanisms. There was CDM, that is Clean Development Mechanism. So CDM is basically it allows developed countries like Annexa 1 countries to invest in emission reduction projects in developing countries, which is non-Annexa 1 countries. So the basically the aim of CDM was to make it easier for European Union and Japan. They were obligated to reduce their carbon emissions, and to help the developing countries to participate on a global level, and to get benefits of improving industrial scenario there. For example, a solar power project in India. So when there is no project, electricity would be generated by coal power plants. But through the CDM activity, the project installs, for example, solar power, photovoltaic cells or photovoltaic systems. So the CERs can be generated. CERs here are carbon units basically, and the CERs are equivalent to the carbon emissions, which is avoided by replacing the coal power plant with solar energy. So basically, the benefits to these are it promotes renewable energy, it reduces air pollution, and it also creates jobs and some employment. Second is joint implementation. So joint implementation is basically it allows the Annex 1 countries to collaborate on emission reduction or removal projects to share the resulting credits. So basically, two countries or two um, nations can come together and collaborate on a project, and the resulting credits would be shared between them. Now the third is IET, that is International Emission Trading. So each participating, so here the term is used assigned amount units, AAUs. So each participating country under the Kyoto Protocol is allowed an initial amount of AAUs, which represent the right to emit a specific amount of GHG. If any company decrease, I mean, if any company do not emit that amount of CO2, but lesser amount of CO2 than that, then it has a surplus of AAUs, which they can sell to another country and get money in exchange for that. So these were the three concepts which were there in the Kyoto Protocol. And then the Article 6 happened in the Paris Agreement. So these were all kind of diminished because Article 6 covers a larger concept and the larger mechanism. So basically, Article 6 of Paris Agreement is also a key component here because it is an international cooperation to reduce the GHGs through market-based mechanisms. Now, there are two articles here which are very important. Article 6.2, which is internationally transferred mitigation outcomes. So it refers to transfer of emission reduction between countries to meet their NDCs, that are national developed contributions. If I'm not wrong here.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, nationally determined contribution.
National determined contributions. Yeah, correct. So Article 6.2, it enables the trading of carbon credit across the borders, and it creates a global carbon market where countries can buy and sell mitigation outcomes. For example, a country A has surplus emission reductions through renewable energy projects, and country B, who is struggling to meet its NDCs, they can purchase these ITMOs to meet its climate targets. Article 6.4 talks about sustainable development mechanism, and the CDM under the Kyoto Protocol is somewhere similar to that. So it is designed to operate on a global scale, and it provides co-benefits to the place where the project is happening. The co-benefits like economic development, social inclusion, and SDM is basically governed by supervisory body to ensure that these projects are of very high standards and they align with SDG. Um, okay, so now the thing is how the carbon credits are created and verified. So basically, first, a project is identified for a carbon reduction. So to create carbon credits, a project must first focus on reducing the carbon emissions from the atmosphere. So there are many type of projects that we can do it from, like renewable energy projects, forestation projects, energy efficiency projects. Then step two happens where a baseline emission scenario or baseline scenario is set. So baseline scenario is business as usual scenario. So basically, if a project of any forestry project, if it says that if this project or any of the carbon credit project won't be here or offset project won't be here, then the deforestation would have happened. So the baseline scenario setting is very important for understanding how important or how viable the carbon credits are. Third is measure and monitor emission reductions. So once the project start running, the next step is to ensure the amount of emission reductions, and which is yeah which really helps the project developer to understand how they are tracking and how much emission reductions is actually happening. Then happens a verification, which is third party verification, like there are CDM, VCS. These are verification standards, gold standard, earthhood. So these are verification bodies which help to verify that how much of what a project is claiming that is actually happening on ground. So these are the third party auditors. And then the issuance of carbon credit happens, and then the carbon credits are sold or traded in the carbon markets. uh, I think yeah, next we will move to the key players in the carbon market. Till now, anyone has a question here? If Yeah, if someone wants to ask something or add on something here.
Yeah, I'm just uh, sharing it on screen so that everyone can visualize. I hope that's fine, right?
Yeah, of course, please.
Yeah. So these are just running notes, whatever you are explaining.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so anyone have any question or anything to add on this point, please, you can do so.
Yeah, so who is like regulating this all this CDP, and who is like uh, uh, controlling all this? Like any governing body is there, or like something like that?
Yeah, governing bodies in the if you talk about compliance market, there is always government, which is a governing body there. And when you talk about these which are voluntary carbon markets, then I think the Paris Agreement, I mean, or the Kyoto Protocol, which was there earlier. I think these were the governing bodies. And I think the third party verifiers are also there to actually govern what is happening on ground, to understand what is actually the scenario there.
Yeah, like third party is like certification or like a gold. You are saying about the standards, right? So any third party like assurance company are verify this.
Yeah, so there is assurance companies for there. For example, yeah, as I said, that the gold standard and everything, these are actually not assurance parties. They are basically registries, and which and the assurance parties can be, for example, TUV Nord or Earthhood. So these are the
Mhm.
third party auditors which audit the projects, which audit what is happening on ground, like what is happening in reality.
Okay, thank you.
Kulkarni sir,
Yes, Murli sir, please.
can I add something?
Yeah, please, please.
When the Kyoto Protocol came into existence, the entire control of Kyoto Protocol was with UNFCCC. So they will have to register all the projects there through going through the national bodies or authorized bodies, and anyone, any company, if they want to initiate a project, will get the permission from the respective country, whoever is the apex body of the country, based on the local regulations and the prevailing situations. In other words, when a project is taken, for example, we have all tungsten old type bulb, we will change it to LED bulb, for example, which is energy efficiency project. What is required is that that project will have to meet certain legal requirements or the criteria. Number one, if it is a law within the country, it will not qualify as a CDM project or a clean development mechanism project. Number two, so they use a term called additionality criteria. So, additionality criteria, whatever is there, must be fulfilled to start a project. So, that will have to be justified. And second thing is that if that meets the additionality criteria, then we should have a methodology for that. How do we measure this? How do we monitor it? What is the sort of validation requirement which is required, and the verification for maybe 10 years or 20 years is required. All these things get detailed, and the project is initiated. It goes through the validation and verification. Now with the CDM, with the project going down, and a lot of projects came in and it got registered, but the value of CDM, the emission, certified emission reduction, CERs, it came down, and parallelly the voluntary emission reduction mechanism started, like what madam said, the gold standard, Vera standard, etc. Now, these are controlled by the so-called the validation and verification bodies, or VVBs, who verify the details, and based on the assurance statement that a company like that exists, they have initiated a project and they have done the emission reduction meeting the so-called a gold standard criteria or social carbon criteria, whatever it is, multiple standards, and then they give the assurance statement, and that assurance statement enables an organization to register themselves in an exchange like our stock exchange. There are various exchanges which are regional as well as international exchanges like New York and other places. You have exchange in Singapore and local regional exchanges, and you register there, and then it goes for trading. And the what do you call the, I won't use the word fees, but the level of this thing, the amount, which is the price of the emission units, will depend on the supply demand situation. So if the supply is more, there are more people doing project, and so much is available, then the price becomes low. If there is a scarcity, immediately the price goes up. That is the market mechanism based on supply and demand. So two types of controls. One is, if you look at the emission trading scheme, or ETS, it is all taken care of by the respective governments. If it was the clean development mechanism, the control was with UNFCCC. And now these voluntary standards and mechanism, they are in with the exchanges. And that has its own plus and minus, which madam will discuss. Okay, Kulkarni sir.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, sir. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Murli sir. Yeah, so I would like to explain a bit on the additionality criteria, as sir said. So
Yeah.
basically, additionality and methodologies. These are two things which are very important for a carbon project. So additionality is something that a project can be termed additional only if it cannot be happened in the baseline scenario. So if a project is something, for example, uh, an additionality criteria could be, sorry, I'm not remembering any of them right now,
Sure,
but
sure. Let's take this one example, what sir said, right? So it should not be previously in the national law or
yeah,
something like that.
exactly. So, for example, if there is already a project going on, something
Mm,
similar like that. So, or example, it is not in a national law. So these projects
mm,
are not considered additional. Some projects
mm,
which they already have a set of criteria. So based on that, additionality is decided of a project. Second is methodology. Methodology is also very important for each type of project, and there are separate versions for those methodologies. For each
mm.
standard, there are separate versions, and yeah, I think these are very important 2 points which needs to be taken care of once someone is implementing a carbon project. So yeah, next we would let's go to the key players in the carbon market. So key
Perfect.
players in the carbon market could be first the government and regulatory bodies. So the government and international organization, they play a very huge role in setting rules and regulations for the carbon markets, as Sir said, particularly a compliance market. So they establish the frameworks and policies that determine how emissions are measured, capped, and traded. For example, EU ETS, it's a completely compliance market. Second is carbon credit buyers. So buyers are basically the entities that purchase the carbon credit either to meet the regulatory requirements or to offset their emissions voluntarily, like in the voluntary markets. Third is carbon credit sellers, that are project developers. So sellers are entities that develop carbon offset projects that generate carbon credits. So these projects focus on activities that reduce, remove, or avoid GHG emissions, such as renewable energy installations or forest conservation or methane capture from landfill. These all kind of projects. Now, fourth
Can
comes the
we list
certificate.
this? Can we list which are the different activities through which we can, let's say, remove the carbon? So first is deforestation.
Yeah.
Sorry, reforestation.
Uh,
I'm sorry.
yeah. So avoided deforestation can be also, so
Okay.
basically
Mm,
forestry would be a domain into which all of
mm,
these can come. Second is it might be renewable energy.
Okay.
Energy efficiency, like increasing the efficiency of energy use in buildings, like factories or vehicles or anything like that.
Okay.
Methane capture can be there, which captures the methane from landfills or agriculture waste
Okay.
that would
Okay.
otherwise go into the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think these four are the major
Oh,
ones. I think there are a lot of, I think, the sectors where the scope of project can be defined, but I think these are the major which I have come across.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, perfect, perfect. Yeah,
You have
we can.
nowadays you have carbon sequestration, carbon capture and utilizing it for various other purposes. It could be within the facility or it could be from outside.
Mm-hmm.
So that is
Right.
a separate topic, carbon
Yeah.
capture and
Storage,
utilization and
yeah,
storage. Yeah.
And I
correct.
guess India is also have one policy now. So one document is released by India on
Yeah,
carbon capture.
recently, yeah, you are right. Recently, there is a document which has been released. Um, okay, so if we, yeah, move on to the fourth key player into this whole carbon credit scenario is certification bodies. Like I said, these organizations, they provide the rules and frameworks for how carbon offset projects are measured, reported, and verified. Fifth is third party verifiers. So these are independent organizations or experts. They're responsible for assessing, verifying that emission reductions claimed by the project are real, additional, and permanent. Sixth is carbon exchange and brokers. So carbon exchange are platforms where carbon credits can be bought or sold, and brokers facilitate the trade by connecting the buyers and sellers. And for example, Chicago Climate Exchange. So it's a voluntary carbon trading platform that is used to operate in the United States. The NGOs or some organizations can also be a key player into the carbon credit in the carbon market. And the seventh is financial institution and investors. So financial institutions are basically like they are basically investors. So they play a role in carbon market by funding carbon project or investing in carbon credits and trading them for their profit. So let's talk about regulatory and policy frameworks in the carbon markets. So the regulatory and policy frameworks, they define the rules, the standards, the mechanisms that govern that how carbon credits are created, traded, and verified. So basically, as we said, that carbon markets can be broadly classified into compliance markets and voluntary markets. So, so policy frameworks can be set up by in Paris Agreement, Kyoto Protocol, national and regional carbon market frameworks. For example, European Union emission trading system. So it is the world's largest and most established compliance market, and it has cap and trade system. So the EU sets an overall cap on emissions for all the covered sectors, and companies within these sectors are allocated emission allowances. So if they emit less than their allowance, they can get surplus credits, and if they exceed the cap, they must buy their additional allowances. Now, the voluntary carbon market standards. So there are several standards and certification bodies which provide credibility to voluntary offset projects. For example, VCS. So VCS is Verified Carbon Standard. So it is one of the most widely used standards in the carbon market, and it ensures that carbon credits are only real, measurable, additional, and permanent in the carbon in the and the emission reductions are real in the greenhouse gas emissions. So, how does India approach the carbon market, the whole scenario? So, India is trying to approach the carbon market through international participation, like it did in CDM. Asia had the largest participation in the CDM. So India has a huge chunk there. So India is actively engaged in CDM under Kyoto Protocol, and it earning like CER, certified emission reductions from renewable energy. And second, the domestic carbon market regulations, you might have heard of PAT scheme, perform, achieve, and trade scheme. So it was launched in 2012, and this scheme encourages energy incentive intensive industries to promote energy efficiency, generate energy efficiency certificates that can be traded. Now, there is another thing which is called National Action Plan on Climate Change, NAPCC. So, that's a framework where several missions, including renewable energy and energy efficiency, it helps India reduce emissions and transition to low carbon economy. Next is carbon pricing and future policies. So, while India doesn't have their own carbon tax yet, it is exploring on the carbon pricing and internal carbon pricing mechanisms in the private sectors. Now that we have discussed a lot on the mechanism of the carbon market and everything, now there is a lot of challenges also when it comes to the carbon market. So first is market integrity and credibility. So there can be a fraud there. So some carbon credits can be fraudulent. So for example, when a project claims that it there would be emission reductions, but they don't actually happen. For instance, recently GS Gold Standard, it found that some of the forestry projects in Indonesia, it issued carbon credits despite the fact that emission reductions, they were overstated or not even existent. There is also price volatility. So the price of carbon credits can dynamically fluctuate due to policy changes or economic factors. For example, when EU ETS faced a surplus of credits, prices dropped significantly, making it cheaper for companies to buy credits than reduce emissions. Additionality and effectiveness of projects. As I said, additionality is a very important factor. So some projects might not genuinely reduce emissions beyond what would have happened anyway. For example, if there is a renewable project financed by carbon credit but was already planned, or it is profitable without them, then it might not be additional, and there is not no use of a project gaining carbon credits or generating carbon credits over a project which was already there in the first place or making some profit. Then comes the environmental integrity. So there is a concern that carbon market may allow companies to simply buy credits rather than cutting their emissions directly. For example, a company like Shell might purchase carbon credits but not make meaningful changes to their own operations. There is also greenwashing there, that companies nowadays claim very much they would go into carbon neutral by 2030, 2025, but not reducing significant emissions within their operations. For example, I read a case study about Delta Airlines, which claimed carbon neutrality, but still heavily relies on fossil fuels. And
So,
yeah,
so here is a question. Like, SBTI also doesn't recognize this carbon credit and all this offsetting, because they are focusing on the absolute emission. And as you say that some of the country are like they are doing something and showing something, like some greenwashing is going on. So how uh, as SBTA is not recognize this as a part of offsetting or something like that, then like how they can achieve the absolute reduction? Like, this is a part of, like, they are doing as a greenwashing also. So yeah, like some of the countries are now setting towards the net zero goal, not for the carbon neutrality.
okay, sorry, I didn't get the question there. Is it about the how can someone achieve a complete carbon neutral?
Yeah, no, it is about like these are as a part of greenwashing. Then how we can like avoiding this, like how we can know about the
The
what you can,
credibility.
yeah, credibility and the assurance part.
And whether it is
Okay,
actually helping or not. So
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
right.
intended purpose is we need to reduce the emissions and ultimately global warming and climate change. So whether it is helping the purpose or not, how do we ensure that it is happening?
Yeah, like
Dhananjay, I have
Mhm.
the same question. When the SBTI is not encouraged for the carbon credits, so
Yeah,
why should anyone can invest in the green project like forestation, carbon capture? So when the net goal is to reduce the our carbon emission by the process. So what is the intent of doing this activity? It will discourage. So can you explain bit more?
Yeah, so that is a big question. And
And same time, the Indian government is also coming with the, as you share last week, carbon credit policy. So it is a contradiction. One part is that absolute reduction. Second part is that the SBT is not recommend this certificate. So both are the contradictory statement.
agree.
Pulkar
yeah,
So
will
and
say.
greenwashing is going on. Like they are showing, some of the credibility lose day by day. And that's why
And
SBTI just doesn't recognize this as a part of their 1.5-degree target reduction target. Yeah.
and one more confusion is in this carbon credit is that uh, every country has make their own regulation. As you know, the CBAM have their own regulation, and now the India make their own regulation. So what will happen? There isn't two market in the same place when we doing the same activity. How will make it sense when we generate emissions? So can you just elaborate? The same time, same emission and counter in two different origin. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
will difficult to manage.
yeah. So problem is there, and what I feel is problem is identified by many of the people as well. And one of the solution means I don't have the complete solution, but what I have read. So there is one solution in blockchain technology which is coming, but I don't know whether it is verifiable or not. But while reading about today's topic, there was one white paper from Infosys. Quickly, I'll just share that also on the screen. I couldn't read it completely, but this is the white paper, digital carbon credit ecosystem powered by blockchain. So as we know, some of the technology solutions are coming. So this is one of the, and blockchain and maybe GIS. So these are some of the things that will come, but definitely it's a challenge. And how do we enable this overall reduction, total reduction in emissions? So that is really one of the challenge. But I couldn't read it, but just I'm just sharing it on screen. So this you may find interesting.
Yeah, I think Dhananjay, everyone is right here because talking about SBTI doesn't actually consider the carbon credits in the first place. They talk about reduction in the first place, which is actually very important here. But with the intention of this in the first place of establishing a carbon markets was to get the profit. So basically, business will happen everywhere. So basically, to get the profit to the business as well, and also to the underdeveloped or developing countries. So um if there is any project which is set up in a developing country which is for for carbon credit project or any project, then by this the country can be developed as well, and the market, I mean, they would get incentives and everything for that. So I think the basics was this behind this, but it is very difficult to track that how much is actually happening on ground, because reading on paper is something different. So that's why I think SPTI doesn't consider it, because reading on paper is something different while actually seeing
Right.
something on ground truth.
Yeah. And second thing is having this complete transparency is very difficult thing. And even the net zero or what we are talking about. So let's say if let's say I have some emissions, cap and trade is very important in this scenario where let's say as we implement this process, so it should get more stringent. The caps should get reduced, the emissions that are available for these organizations, and it should motivate them for, let's say, going for reducing this emission. So this is, I guess, something important, but still we know that all these organizations won't be shifting, let's say, all their business as usual to the maybe reducing the emissions. So let's see how it. But frankly speaking, for me also, I don't think that carbon credit is the solution, because the net is in same way, like let's say you make some mess and you, let's say, clean it up, and that's zero, right? So then we haven't created the mess, so that is in the first place. So this is similar what I feel in my idea. So like we have created some mess, we have also cleaned that mess, so in totality the net is zero. So that's how everything is clean, but the emissions are already happened, or there are huge scope to bypass the system, or having the same emission at different part of the world, and that still counts as the one atmosphere for all as a common resource. So yeah, so I would also request others for your opinion as well. Yes, Murli sir, you want to share
Kulkarni
something?
sir,
Yes sir,
see
please.
how the evolution of this carbon pricing and credit has happened. If we see, is that when the CDM came, the financial incentive for each of the credit was given, that one uh, carbon emission reduction or 1 ton of carbon, it had a dollar price of $2 or $4 like that. So a lot of organizations started going for that, looking at getting a financial incentive for that, and they could sell it in the market, register it and sell it. So what happened in this, the greed which was there, everybody started manipulating things. And if you read one of the, I would urge all to read one article written by Center for Science and Environment long back. CDM was not a clean development mechanism, but a corrupt development mechanism. So this was their argument, telling that it is not working and people are only looking at the financial incentive part of it rather than looking at the environmental sustainability of the projects. And some of the projects they gave examples were, I mean, horrifying. One of the municipalities which was there, they had all the waste segregated and they started burning, and they could get carbon credit for that. I mean, which was usual to do, the incineration part, but that also got credit by verification and whatnot. So the credibility got into the question, and subsequently, when the CDM as a scheme with Kyoto Protocol going down, the prices went from dollar to cents. Okay, so this offset mechanism, which started as a process to reduce or contain the climate change, flopped. So then associations or organizations like SBTI came in, okay, science based, whatever technological initiative or whatever it is, and they set a criteria for big polluters. So anybody and everybody cannot become a member of SBTI. I am a small MSME in India, Aurangabad. I will become an SBTI member. It is not possible. So we have to look at the criteria in the production terms, financial terms, and various other criteria, emission terms particular, so that they wanted to address those big polluters, or in other words, multinational organizations where the pollution was prevalent in developing countries. That was the idea, and they came up with that. And there they emphasized this offsetting cannot be accepted, because the net zero achievement, if we say that we have to go to the pre-industrial levels of 1990s, there has to be an absolute term reduction, right? So that
Right.
is what they call it as a bathtub model. If somebody is interested, you can Google and see. It is like
Mhm.
we have a 50% of the bathtub filled, and from the top, the tap is open, water is getting into the bathtub, and from the bottom, there is an outlet from which the water goes. Now, if the input is higher than the output, we are not going to achieve the same level of 50%. So, what is today happening is there are more and more polluters who are emitting carbon and putting it into the atmosphere, but the reduction process is very less. So, the incentive or the motivation is that you do it in absolute terms to achieve net zero. So, when we look at the concept of net zero, we are looking at absolute reduction. So, the carbon offset business is slowly dying or it is not getting accepted as a process. But however, when we look at the situation where ETS, emission trading scheme, and other things, regulatory framework, this sort of an offsetting the purchasing is permitted with the capping which has to be done, and beyond the capping, if it goes, they are still permitting that. So what this is the second point. Now the third thing, as somebody was asking, how will CBAM and other things work, is that that is a different process altogether. That if a company in Europe or UK, now they have also come up with UK CBAM, if they want, they are looking at the embedded carbon which is there. Embedded carbon meaning they go to some cheaper, I mean, countries where environmental law is weak, and they give the project and get the dirty material into Europe. So, whatever they wanted to achieve somewhere, it is like rather prevention of pollution to displacement of pollution. So, they want to avoid the displacement of pollution from Europe to other places. So, in order to come up with prevention of pollution, they have put a tax. So, you pollute more, you pay more tax. Or if you want to pay less tax, then you improve your efficiency, your methods or R&D, and come up with solutions in absolute terms, right? Now, the last point which you raised is again interesting one, the use of blockchain technology. If we see that the blockchain technology, if you Google and see, over the years, it has been identified as a good technology where everybody is a owner and there is no server, etc., etc. Advantages are there. The biggest problem is that this technology is an energy guzzler. It is consuming so much of energy for a process to be done. Okay. So what is happening is, on one side you want to achieve reduction, on the other side you are consuming energy. So unless that energy comes from renewable sources, then the blockchain technology is not going to be effective. So that is why big companies like Microsoft and other people, they are coming up with some objectives by 2030 or 2050 rather, they will become neutral, etc., etc. And they are coming up with ambitious targets, right? But the question now always, and as an environmentalist or somebody asks always, is that will these companies exist in 2050? Okay, we don't know. See, if it collapses tomorrow, you have polluted everything, as you rightly said. Something initiative has been done, and I leave the company, leave the arena, and go away. Okay. So what happens then? That is a big question mark which is there. So it is, if you look at it, so many things are happening, so many people are engaged, so many talks happen, but uncertainty is there. And it is all because still the fossil fuel producers, the cartel is very, very powerful. They don't want to get out because it will be like big companies becoming either bankrupt or zero. So they still want to hold fort and manipulate things. And it is interesting for some of you, if you are interested, you hear the speech of Al Gore in the World Economic Forum, and even the recent speech he gave in COP29. Okay, so I hope I have taken a little bit of time, but just to explain how things are moving around and what sort of complexities are there. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, for this discussion. It was really enlightening to hear all of your thoughts here. And I think this is it from my side. We can all discuss on the solutions, the problems, but recently I came across a registry, which is a very small registry, and it is, I think, some Native American registry. It is for villagers, like all the village. It's a very small village in that area, and the projects of those villages are registered on that registry, and they get forward issuances for that. So before the project is done, they get issuances prior to that, and I'll find that registry and definitely get back to you. So what is happening there is, so the small farmers, they get benefits of through those carbon credits. So I think to and this would definitely help in the ecosystem and the everything. Like if you look at the good side of it, I think there is somewhere which we can feel that okay, the carbon credits are actually helping the smaller economies or the developing countries. So I think, yeah, this is one good thing which I found, of one good registry. So I will definitely mention in that in the group. So yeah.
Sure. Perfect. Perfect. Yes. And any other point, because fortunately today we also have Pradeep with us. So if you want to add anything.
Yeah, first of all, it was really a very good presentation and very good discussions. You covered the very, very complex subject that all of us knows. But I can only say that some process, there will be, if you introduce some process, there will be some pros and cons. But some process is better than nothing. So this is very, very important because we have to start some process and refine it. So that's what is the important things. And there was a discussion in between about the global kind of standardization, like the European Union is making CBAM, UK is making, India is making. How the standardization will take place, that's a big issue. And this standardization is really, really difficult because it's not a technological issue, it is not a social issue, it is a political issue, economic issue, and everybody has their own interests. And it will be really difficult. And we should not expect that these things actually will happen in a magic. This will happen over a period of time. For example, the EU started CBAM, and once the EU started CBAM, that has really given a big push for all other countries, including India, who are actually sleeping on this subject. Now suddenly they understood that, oh, that we need to do something. Otherwise, we will be blocked in trade in Europe. So that way I see that CBAM may not be a perfect one, but a good start. And it is given a big stimulation, I will say, stimulation all over the world So everybody is now forced to think on this direction. And once every country will have their own system, there will be some weakness, there will be some fraud. This is a part of the, even the financial system, which is hundreds of years old, still the fraud takes place. So we cannot say that our financial practice is completely fraudless. So that is a part of the life. And I think eventually, even if everybody is having their own carbon mechanism, but the global trade will prevail, and you will eventually see everybody will be following. So what I guess in 5 to 10 years, all the emission index will be more or less the same in a kind of small boundaries, and the carbon price will be also more or less same. Otherwise, you will not be able to do a kind of global trade. So this global trade, which is now fired by CBAM, is possibly a biggest force for alignment, because this force was actually missing. We were talking a lot of things we wanted to do, but the trade and economy, the money has the biggest force. Now, I think
Right.
something is going to happen. So this is the conclusion, or I think the small comments I would like to
Great.
keep in this forum. Thank you very
Great,
much.
great. And one more question actually for you, because you have led the policy level discussion for the industries. So just one question: how industries are looking at this carbon trading, carbon credit? So if you just can comment.
See, industry has multiple objectives. The first objective is to be profitable and be floating in the market. This is very, very important. And
Right,
that's how whatever policy you do, so they will be always hovering around how to optimize or how to reduce the costs. So that will be the, if I say one line objective of industry is the cost driven. So
right.
whatever policy you do, if there is a
Mm.
counter policy by which we can produce something at a lesser cost, industry will not hesitate to do that. This is the one
Right,
line principle. So, that's how the things will, even whatever regulatory you do, the profit, that's what I told, that now the trade and profit will be actually the biggest driving force. And they will be forced to now do that. So this,
yeah,
this is a
great.
very brutal answer, but that's the reality in life.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Thank you so much for joining. Yes. And before we end today's session, if anybody would like to add your comment or your voice, if we haven't heard your voice, please, you can. Or any final comment if you want to share. Yeah,
And can I ask a question, a short question? My name is Durai Raja.
please.
I am from Bangalore. Probably, though I'm aware of this platform, today I got a chance to be part of this discussion. Wonderful. And thanks for everybody's contribution here. Yeah, I just have a question. It's about our own country. So basically, we keep hearing about other countries doing well on this sustainable area, like European countries, Oceanic countries, US, UK, and all. But when it comes to our own country, we always keep hearing things which are very low about the projects that are going on, or the kind of trigger is always low. I just want to understand what makes us to be low on this front. What is actually happening, which is not keeping things, though we are surrounded by a lot of pollution issues. Yeah, we are a very highly populated country according to our pollution also, but the kind of efforts that we can understand is very much limited compared with some of the other countries that are not actually highly polluting. Yeah, it's my general question. Yeah, please, if somebody can add, somebody can help me about this, that will be wonderful. Thank you.
Great, great, great. Anybody would like to answer it? I'll just,
Maybe I take this an opportunity to give my opinion, because I've seen both the places,
please,
India
yeah.
as well as the European situation. So it's I will say this is a very high intense force which comes from nature. I will ask you a question, like which was a question for me when I started traveling to Europe. In generally,
Mhm.
we see that European people are more disciplined than the people in India. It's not that people are bad, but this is how. So it was my
Mhm.
first question when I stepped into Europe to find out, because I was not able to get really a good answer what happens. It must be having some bigger force to make this attitude change. It cannot be driven by only political will or social will. There must be something else. So what I found that this weather in Europe actually the driving force. That if you are not basically you are getting almost 6 to 7 months for work, and if you are not able to prepare yourself very well in winter, you are finished. So you are actually, nature is forcing you to be disciplined. Now in India, if you go, even if you do, if you delay the work for 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years, you are not going to die. You will be still alive. You will not be washed out. So the nature is actually giving this kind of allowances to us in India or Asian country to be not so strictly disciplined as the Europeans, because otherwise, in Europe also, if you see the North Europe and South Europe, we'll have, like, if you go to Spain, if you go to south of France, you will get almost like Indian kind of situation, like people are sleeping in the afternoon, etc., etc. But if you go to the north, it is absolutely, if you are invited to a kind, even a house party for 7 o'clock, if you are delayed without any proper reason, possibly you will not never get invitation from that friend or relative in future. That will be closed because they will be identifying you as a person not in their group. Now, I draw this example to to answer these questions what was asked, that why we don't have the similar kind of initiative. Now, if you see the Europe, it's mostly surrounded by the sea. And as the weather is, temperature is going up, sea levels are going up. If you go to the Holland people are one of the most vocal in this kind of things, and they're already below the sea. And so they are the person, they are the people, like, if you see the European Union, most of the European Union prosper countries are under big danger. So this is the nature is actually kicking them to be alert, and they know that it's not possible for them to tackle this, so they need to involve everyone. Like now, slowly the similar impact is coming to India. Like temperature is gone high. It's the opposite problem. It's a lack of water. There is a excess of water, and you will see the moment everybody will start feeling the pinch of this nature change. India will also do the same initiative. That we can see already a lot of initiatives have started. Now it will happen more and more because the nature will kick your ass to do that. So this is the biggest force which will actually be no policy, no economic, nothing is going to be bigger force than the natural force. And you will see a lot of project in next 5 to 10 years will initiate in India is a big force. It's already started. A lot of solar projects, lots of wind projects. People are getting completely aware, because if I can compare, in my childhood, the temperature in my area used to be 32, 33 in summer maximum. 33 means it was a big, and now it is more than 40. So everybody has understood that something is happening wrong. And of course, there is economic dynamics, etc. There are complex dynamics, but in my opinion, nature is the most important part which will actually force whole things to happen. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot for adding that perspective because I hadn't thought of it earlier. Thank you so much. But I would also like to answer this in a way that uh, when we say that Indians are not living sustainable life, or if we say that if any Western country or whatever example we want to take, they are living sustainable life or they are doing better in terms of environment, I don't think so. In two terms, there are answers in a two way also. In India also, there are two types, like in metro city or some big organizations, and there are also people who are living more environment friendly life. So I would not generalize it, but definitely most of the India is which is already living well environment friendly life. But still, I also agree that in metro city or many of the corporations or many of the government systems, in a way, uh, uh, like if we take the example of Delhi, so it's just un unpardonable offense if we talk about it for children or for people to live in such 500 AQI. It's not breathable air also, right? So basic necessity. So yeah, so that is the thing I would say. And if you want to explore more on what let's say India's traditional systems that we have, eco-friendly practices that we have, across India. So this is one of the great resource prepared by ministry, and I would share this link in WhatsApp group as well. So India's culture, climate friendly, sustainable practices. It's a great resource, and I feel most of the India, around I would say 70-80% of the India is already utilizing this practices. But yes, the I would say the habit of following what is coming from West, and new aspirations that everyone wants wealth in a way that the Western nations have. So that is something that we need to, I guess, understand. So it's a behavioral issue that we have.
Yeah, also, I would also like to add something here. If we talk about strictly about carbon markets here, that why India is not performing that well, or we haven't heard about that. So I think CDM was one such thing where India's participation was huge. Like a lot of the projects were registered under CDM. So shifting from CDM to now another registry, or to now another type of practice, is something which is difficult for India, I think. Also, the other countries which we see, they have stringent laws in place, they have compliance markets and everything. We are also a bit, I think, driven by political political issues, or the political practices which we have. So I think the original or the real work comes to the toll, and the other things are very much influenced there. Also, I think we have this, most of the small medium enterprises. So I think now India is booming in industrial sectors. I think there are a lot of SMEs here, which needs, I think there the awareness is needed. So if you know about it, there is a solar incentive which is given by Government of India for having solar panels in your home. So I think we are trying to be there. And yeah, I think we will be there soon, like, because we have our own domestic framework now, launched in 2023. So I think, yeah, we will also be a leader in there.
Great. Great. Thanks a lot, Geetanjali. Yes, anybody would like to add, please?
Yeah, maybe a small comments, because I will say that there is nothing to be negative about India. It's really moving in a very fast trend. I share one of my experience. Like, I left Tata Steel, where the technology was state of the art. When I landed into Eastern Europe, I was absolutely surprised that the technology was quite old. And if you see the emission, etc., they're much, Indian companies now are really good. The problem is that the India have a lot of people, and how to deal with this is possibly the great challenge. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Namaste, auntie.
Yes. So any other comment, any other final closing statement from your side? Anyone? You can. If not, we will stop here then. Yes, Murli sir, you want to speak?
No. My this thing comments were, number one is that this carbon credit as a mechanism is going to be there for future, and this is the way the lead will go, or the path for addressing the climate change will be there as a market based mechanism. Second thing is the initiative, to answer to the question what was asked. Some of the things what we see is it is a projection of the media, that whatever negative gets publicized immediately, but whatever positive which is there, they don't come out. This is the second issue. Lot of projects, lot of initiatives are even being done by MSME organizations and all, to the possible extent, particularly in the area of energy efficiency, etc., because of the prohibitively high electricity bill, and they are feeling the pinch and they will have to survive. So it is a the market which is driving them towards addressing these issues, challenges. So, but the basic thing is incentivizing them is based on the policy which is lagging behind, right? So that is one of the reason for that. And third thing is whatever is being done, unlike the Europe, other people talked about Europe and all. Like Europe, if you see a university, people say we have become carbon neutral because we don't use scooters, we go by bicycle. Okay, and there is a garden, lawn, greenery, and whatnot we have planted. This is the thing. Now, our own Indian universities are much more greener, but it is not getting publicized. If you see
Right.
that, all
Agree,
our own
agree.
IIT people will walk or go by cycle and all, or any other big universities. I mean, these practices are there. The
Already there,
basic
yeah.
thing is we don't display it or disclose it as a sort of a green practice or putting it as a effort to address climate change, etc., or biodiversity, other issues. They don't get projected. So that has been one of the weakest thing. And when it comes to disclosure, anybody wants to be too ambitious to disclose more than what has to be disclosed. And that over a period, it falls down, and the progress, whatever was achieved, it becomes a bad name. So, all these things are happening, but what I can say is it is not stagnant. Things are moving, and it is a challenging period or exciting period, one can say. But what is likely to happen? I mean, it's a big question mark if you see that, because everything is with the West, and like countries like us, we are dependent on them. Unless that self-reliance and every other aspect, Atmanirbhar or whatever you call it, leave aside the political part of it, but the capacity to build things within the country and you become powerful, we have to depend on others. And that becomes a big challenge in today's context with regard to climate change.
Yes, wonderful, sir. Couldn't agree more. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, anybody would like to add anything as a final comment? Perfect, perfect. So thank you so much, Geetanjali, for your presentation and sharing the essential points of carbon credit. That was really helpful. And thank you so much, all the members, for your active participation. It really added value to the discussion. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening. Bye. Bye.
Nice
Bye.
meeting. Thank you. Bye bye. Good night.